Okay, let's try and unpack this. Because sometimes what looks like just, standard news about religious groups or media,
Right.
it can really pull you into some surprising stuff. Power, money, influence.
Yeah, it's often at that intersection, isn't it? Religion and media colliding. That's
Yeah.
where things tend to get, well, interesting.
Totally. So today we're doing a deep dive into this whole situation around Yoon Ho. He was a pretty major figure in the Unification Church.
A real heavyweight, yeah.
And we've pulled together quite a bit here. There are articles from that Peace Observatory 2027 blog, some posts from Dom Cafe.
The online forum. And news reports too, right? YTN, JTBC.
Yep, YTN, JTBC, also an article from CISA Journal, and even a news report dating back to May of last year. Basically, we're trying to connect the dots on some pretty serious allegations.
Allegations involving lobbying, some questionable financial activities.
And honestly, this really surprising attempt to buy the YTN News Network, that one jumped out.
It really did. Makes you think, why would a religious organization want to buy a major news network? What's the angle there?
Well, the thing that seemed to really get the ball rolling, the initial spark, was a JTBC report. That was back on April 20th, 2025.
Right, I remember that one. It was about a necklace, wasn't it?
Yeah. Apparently, Yoon Ho gave a necklace meant for Kim Ki-hee, the First Lady, to a fortune teller instead. Kind of a strange place to start for a story about potential high-level influence, wouldn't you say?
Definitely unconventional. But, sometimes it's those odd little details that open the floodgates.
Seems like it. Because after that, the media really started digging into Yoon Ho's other activities, especially these alleged lobbying efforts.
So that necklace story, weird as it sounds, kind of hinted at maybe a pattern or at least prompted people to look closer.
And then you have this group, Peace Observatory 2027, jumping in. They've been defending Yoon Ho and the Unification Church, specifically pushing back against that JTBC reporting.
Which is important context, right? You've got the news outlet making claims, and then this associated group saying, hold on, that's not accurate, or offering a different story.
Exactly. It's not straightforward. Then, fast forward a bit to May 2nd, 2025. JTBC comes out with another piece. This time, it's a recorded conversation.
Yes, the recording. From June 1st, 2023, wasn't it?
That's the one. And in it, Yoon Ho is allegedly talking about trying to buy YTN.
And the price tag was huge.
Huge. 400 billion Korean won. He even apparently claimed he'd met with lawmakers close to the president about it.
Wow. 400 billion KRW. That just flags up the kind of money potentially involved and the ambition behind it. I mean, owning a major news network, that's significant influence.
And true to form, Peace Observatory 2027 responded almost immediately, like the next day, May 3rd.
Questioning the whole YTN acquisition story.
Right. Yeah, questioning it and even sort of suggesting maybe investigation records had been leaked. They put up a blog post about it. The title was something like, Unbelievable Unification Church YTN Acquisition. We hope the prosecution investigates the leak. You get the idea.
And the timing they mentioned is interesting, too. This alleged attempt happened, between late 2022 when YTN's sale was announced.
Right, October, November 2022.
And Kim Ki-hye's trip to Cambodia, Peace Observatory brings that up in their post. Maybe trying to find holes in the timeline.
Could be. Plus, you've got other reports saying this YTN acquisition attempt was actually part of a search warrant related to Kim Ki-hye.
And that detail about the price, 400 billion, one being more than double the market value.
Exactly. Paying that much over the odds. It really makes you ask what the real motivation was. It doesn't sound like just a standard business deal.
No, it suggests a very, very strong desire to get control of YTN, maybe for strategic reasons, shaping the narrative, perhaps. Controlling information?
It's definitely a possibility. So let's talk about Yoon Ho himself for a second. His role in the church, it wasn't minor.
No, not at all. He managed major events for Hak Ja-han, the leader. Things like her birthday celebrations, the big Cheonwon-gung Palace dedication.
Really important stuff within the church, so he was definitely high up.
Which makes his departure in May 2023 pretty significant, right? Suggests a big shift.
Absolutely. And how he left.
Right.
Well, the story gets a bit murky there.
Yeah.
He claims he resigned, health reasons, asked several times, that sort of thing.
But the news reports painted a different picture.
Some suggest he was actually dismissed. So, conflicting accounts right from the start.
And after he left, things changed structurally within the church too, didn't they?
Big time. They apparently reorganized the whole global structure, kind of dismantled the system Yoon was part of, centralized power more. It made it look pretty unlikely he'd be coming back, at least at that point.
Okay, so a fairly definitive exit, it seems.
Well, here's where it gets even more dramatic. There was this post on Danyun Cafe.
Well, the online forum again.
Yeah. It described Yoon's wife allegedly spending 2 days shredding documents at the church headquarters.
Shredding documents. Okay.
And then on the third day, supposedly leaving with 2 big suitcases full of cash.
Cash. How much?
The rumor mentioned in the post was somewhere between 5 and 7 billion KRW.
Wow, okay. That, if true, adds a whole other layer. Document shredding, suitcases of cash. That sounds like a hasty, maybe contentious exit.
Right. But then, just a couple of weeks later, May 24th, 2023, they throw this huge farewell ceremony for him at Cheonpyeong Palace.
A farewell ceremony after the alleged shredding in cash.
Apparently the most lavish one in the church's history, and Hak Ja-han herself gives him a 1 billion KRW severance payment.
Okay, that is confusing. A massive public send-off and a huge payout after all that.
Exactly. It fueled all sorts of speculation, like maybe his exit wasn't quite so final after all, or maybe it was about managing appearances.
It's a very complex picture. The alleged secrecy and drama, then this very public, very generous farewell. Something complicated was definitely going on behind the scenes.
So let's go back to that June 1st recording, the one JTBC got hold of.
Where Yoon is talking about the YTN plan.
Yeah. He's apparently telling a close aide about his ambitions, including YTN. And the thinking is that aide might be the person who leaked the recording.
Suggesting a potential betrayal or breakdown of trust within his own circle.
Seems possible if your close confidant is recording you and then leaking it.
Yeah, it shows the internal pressures and shifting loyalties that can happen when the stakes get this high.
And connecting some more dots. After Yoon left, there were personnel shuffles at the church headquarters. Remember Cho Sung-tae?
The Secretary General, the second in command, basically.
Right, he got demoted.
Right.
Which was seen as a pretty big deal, a clear reprimand.
And the timing. Those changes happened around June 3rd, 2023.
Yeah, just 2 days after Yoon apparently met with Cho Sung-tae on June 1st.
So it looks like Yoon might have been telling Cho, his close associate, about his plans, maybe explaining why he was leaving, right before Cho himself faced consequences.
That seems plausible, doesn't it? It also really highlights how secret this YTN thing must have been.
You mean even someone as high up as Cho Sung-tae might not have known about it?
That's the suggestion, that Yoon was operating pretty independently on that front.
Wow. Keeping a 400 billion won potential acquisition attempt under wraps from your own second in command? That takes some doing and raises more questions about motive.
Now, Yoon did sort of reappear later, didn't he? He became vice president of Sunmoon University in August 2023.
Right, but maybe not with the same level of internal church influence.
Seems like it took a while. Reportedly, he couldn't really sway personnel stuff until Cho Sung-tae, the guy who got demoted, was later put in charge of Gwangjin Church.
But that didn't last long for Cho either, did it?
Nope. He was out again by March 2025, dismissed from Gwangjin Church, reassigned somewhere else.
And that was after Yoon's properties were searched in December 2024.
Exactly. The timing strongly suggests the church was trying to create distance from Yoon as the investigations heated up.
Makes sense. And then reports surfaced about a key church official being questioned by prosecutors.
Probably Cho Sung-tae, given his history with Yoon and his former rank. The allegations involved mishandling funds.
And they were close, right? Cho even testified for Yoon in a defamation case previously.
Yeah. So this whole chain of events, dismissals, reassignments, investigations, it really points to some serious internal fallout and maybe a power struggle.
Absolutely. These kinds of external pressures often expose internal fractures.
Okay, let's shift a bit and look closer at the money side of things. This seems crucial.
Definitely. Where did all this potential funding come from?
Well, reports mention a company set up back in 2017 in Yoon Young-ho and someone named Jung Won-ju started it.
And the allegation is that this company was basically a way to misuse donations.
That's the claim, apparently with help from the Unification Church Foundation chairman and Sunwon Construction.
Interesting that it was set up in 2017, reportedly around the time Yoon and Yoon were consolidating their power base.
And it wasn't the only one. They apparently set up a whole series of companies around 2017, 2018.
Like Jokilam, yeah, a bunch of them.
Yeah, Joralam. Don't know. The list goes on. The suggestion is they were all channels for potentially diverting money.
And many of them aren't even active now.
Reportedly not well managed, many now dormant. Creating so many companies so quickly, it does raise questions about their purpose.
It certainly suggests a complex financial structure, maybe designed to obscure the flow of funds.
And one of them, Yoon, focused on stage design, but also gaming, apparently.
Hmm.
It got over 50 billion KRW in contracts between 2018 and 2022, and that's separate from the costs for the Chinwon-gum interior construction.
50 billion KRW for stage design and gaming from church-related sources. That seems quite high.
It does. And then there's that first company, Ryeon. Reports say it burned through over 10 billion KRW in less than 2 years on something called Magnolia Myeochip.
Magnolia Myeochip, what was that?
Sounded like a complex restaurant, entertainment venue, beauty salon.
Okay. Spending 10 billion KRW that quickly on that kind of venture, again, raises questions if the funds were potentially donations.
But wait, there's more. The big one is the Cheonwon-gung construction cost itself.
Right, the palace. That cost ballooned, didn't it?
Massively. It went from an estimate of 187 billion KRW in 2021 to about 539 billion KRW by 2023.
What? That's an increase of 352 billion KRW in just 2 years.
Exactly. That kind of cost explosion on a construction project is highly unusual, needs a serious explanation.
Unprecedented almost. Suggests major issues, mismanagement, unforeseen problems, or something else driving up the costs.
And remember, that 539 billion, that doesn't even include design, supervision fees, extra interior work, furniture.
So the real total could be significantly higher.
Estimates put the extras at maybe another 150 billion KRW, at least. So the ultimate question is, where is all this cash coming from?
Well, a lot of focus has been on the donations from Japan, right? The Japanese Unification Church members.
Yeah, they were reportedly donating huge amounts, averaging over 400 billion KRW a year between 2015 and 2022.
And by the end of 2022, there was something like 820 billion KRW sitting in Japanese accounts.
That's the figure reported. So theoretically, that could have been a source for something like the YTN purchase.
But didn't something prevent that money from moving?
Apparently, yes. The assassination of Shinzo Abe in Japan reportedly caused major disruption and scrutiny, preventing those funds from being transferred to South Korea.
Which some reports described as fortunate for the church members, meaning the money stayed put.
That was the description, yeah. As if it prevented even more money flowing out.
And after 2020, those Japanese donations reportedly dropped significantly anyway, by over 200 billion KRW a year.
Right, so you have less money coming in from Japan, and this absolutely massive increase in the Cheonwon-gung construction costs.
It sounds like the church was under serious financial strain around that time.
Which makes the timing of that alleged 400 billion KRW bid for YTN seem even more audacious or perhaps desperate.
Definitely precarious timing, financially speaking.
Now, let's connect this back to the lobbying side. It wasn't just about YTN, was it?
No. Reports suggest Yoon's efforts were also tied to a big project in Cambodia.
Ah, the Mekong River Development Project, the Asia-Pacific Union headquarters.
Exactly. And there was an attempt to get ODA official development assistance from the South Korean government for it.
So, trying to use taxpayer money for a church-linked project overseas?
That appears to be the goal. And that CISA Journal article from May 1st, 2025.
What did that say?
It mentioned that a big law firm had actually advised them that the project wasn't transparent enough, lacked clarity. But they seemingly pushed ahead anyway.
Despite legal advice raising red flags, who is the law firm?
It was Jipyong. They've had a Cambodia office since 2009, apparently do a lot of work there.
Okay. And the lawyer involved?
Park Young-shik. He's a former head of the Seoul Prosecutor's Office. So, a very senior legal figure providing this advice.
So they were getting top-level legal counsel, were warned about transparency issues, but potentially ignored it.
That's what the CISA Journal report suggests, yes. Indicates a strong push to get that project going, regardless of the hurdles.
And there were other alleged lobbying goals too, right? Smaller things.
Yeah, things like trying to get the UN Secretariat established in Korea, trying to get the Minister of Education to show up at Unification church events.
Things that would boost the church's profile and legitimacy.
Exactly. But again, we have to note the Unification Church denies these lobbying allegations. They state Yoon left in 2023 and the Cambodia project didn't happen.
Right. Always important to include their official stance. Okay, so finally, the legal fallout. Where does this all stand now?
Well, it's ongoing. Interestingly, there were rumors that a major law firm, Yilchon, considered taking Yoon's case but then backed out. Maybe worried about reputation damage.
That's telling in itself. But Yoon faces potential charges anyway.
Oh, yes. Not just for the alleged bribery, but also, bizarrely, for embezzlement and tax evasion charges that he apparently filed himself earlier, related to 200 billion KRW.
He filed charges against others, presumably, related to embezzlement
Yeah,
that he might now be implicated in.
that's confusing.
It is a very tangled legal situation, and the investigation keeps expanding. That May 4th, 2025 news report.
What was new there?
It said prosecutors are now treating Yoon Young-ho's wife, Lee, as a suspect. She was the finance director for the church's world headquarters.
Ah, okay. So her role overseeing the money during the key period is now under direct scrutiny.
Precisely. She was finance director from 2020 until Yoon left in May 2023, which lines up perfectly with the timeline of this alleged organized lobbying via the fortune teller. They'll be tracing the money flows during her tenure.
And Yoon's defense, what's he reportedly saying? Well, during the investigation, he apparently claimed everything he did was approved by Hak Ja-han, the leader.
Pointing the finger upwards.
Seems like it. And he also apparently made a statement back in 2022 claiming he'd had a private meeting with the president and got tacit consent for certain things.
Whoa. Claiming presidential consent. That's a huge claim.
Huge. And investigators will definitely be trying to verify that. But for now, it's his claim, part of the messy picture.
So, wrapping this all up, it's just this incredibly tangled story, isn't it? You've got alleged lobbying, this audacious YTN bid, massive amounts of money moving around, internal church politics, family members implicated, claims reaching right to the top.
It really is a complex web. The sheer scale of the money involved, the level of influence potentially sought, the high-profile figures,
Yeah.
it's quite astonishing when you lay it all out.
It truly is. And it really leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Which brings us to our final thought for you listening today. When you consider all these pieces we've tried to assemble, the allegations, the denials, the financial trails, the power plays, what does this whole unfolding situation really tell us about how religious organizations, big media, and political power can sometimes intersect in today's world?
And maybe, what questions does it raise for you about transparency, about accountability, not just here, but for any powerful organization operating in society?
Definitely a lot to mull over.